For more than 50 years, nearly every major advance in computing has followed the same basic strategy. Make silicon transistors smaller, place more of them on one chip, then use those extra transistors to increase performance, reduce power consumption, and add new capabilities. That formula transformed computers that once filled entire rooms into processors small enough to fit inside phones, watches, and medical sensors. But silicon cannot shrink forever. As transistor channels become extremely thin, electrical current becomes harder to control. Leakage increases. Heat becomes more difficult to manage. And the material begins behaving in ways that make conventional scaling less effective. Researchers around the world are therefore searching for something that could eventually work alongside silicon, or possibly replace it in specific parts of future chips. A team at Fudan University in China has now demonstrated one of the most advanced alternatives yet. They built a functioning 32-bit RISC-V processor using 5,931 transistors made from molybdenum disulfide. The active semiconductor inside each transistor consists of one layer of molybdenum atoms placed between two layers of sulfur atoms. 3 atomic planes in total. The processor is called RV32WUGI. It can execute standard 32-bit instructions, perform arithmetic, and operate as a programmable microprocessor, rather than a single isolated laboratory transistor. It is not fast. It runs at approximately 1 kHz, millions of times slower than a modern desktop or smartphone processor. Its 5,931 transistors are almost nothing compared with the billions found in commercial chips. But speed was not the purpose of this experiment. The breakthrough was proving that thousands of atomically thin transistors could be manufactured consistently, connected into reusable logic cells, and assembled into a complete processor architecture. Researchers did not simply create one transistor that worked under perfect laboratory conditions. They created a system. And that may be the step two-dimensional semiconductor technology needed most. Why silicon becomes difficult to shrink? A transistor is essentially a tiny electrical switch. One terminal controls whether current can travel through a semiconductor channel between two other terminals. When the switch is on, current flows. When it is off, the channel should block that current. Billions of these switches combine to create logic gates, registers, memory interfaces, and processor cores. For decades, reducing transistor dimensions improved nearly everything. Smaller transistors switched faster, they required less energy, and manufacturers could place more computing power inside the same area. But when a conventional semiconductor channel becomes extremely thin, the electric field controlling it can lose authority over the charge inside. Current may leak even when the transistor is supposed to be off. Interfaces between the semiconductor and surrounding materials can interfere with electron movement. The difference between the transistor's on and off states can become less distinct. Engineers have extended silicon scaling through advanced structures such as FinFETs and gate-all-around transistors. Instead of controlling the channel from only one side, the gate wraps around more of it. That improves electrostatic control. But even these designs face limits. The thinner the silicon becomes, the more its electrical properties can degrade. This is why two-dimensional semiconductors are so interesting. They are naturally atomically thin. Researchers do not need to carve a thick block of material down until only a fragile channel remains. The crystal itself is built in layers. What molybdenum disulfide actually is, molybdenum disulfide, usually written as MoS2, is made from molybdenum and sulfur. In its single-layer form, one sheet of molybdenum atoms sits between two sheets of sulfur atoms. This structure is extremely thin, but it still behaves as a semiconductor. That distinction matters. Graphene is probably the most famous two-dimensional material. It is strong, thin, and highly conductive. But ordinary graphene lacks a natural band gap. That makes it difficult to switch completely off, which is a serious problem for digital logic. A processor needs a clear difference between 0 and 1. MoS2 has a band gap, allowing a transistor to control current much more effectively. Its atomically thin body also gives the transistor gate strong electrical control over the complete channel. In theory, that could help engineers continue shrinking devices after conventional silicon becomes increasingly difficult. But producing one excellent MoS2 transistor is not the same as building a processor. A transistor may work beautifully when a researcher selects one perfect location on a small sample. A processor requires thousands, millions, or eventually billions of devices to behave predictably at the same time. A small variation that seems unimportant in one transistor can ruin an entire logic circuit when repeated across a wafer. That is the challenge the Fudan team tried to solve. From 1 transistor to 5,931. Before RV32WUGI, researchers had created many promising two-dimensional transistors. They had also built small logic circuits, but integration remained limited to only a few hundred devices. UGI increased that complexity dramatically. The finished processor contained exactly 5,931 months 2 transistors on a die measuring approximately 6 mm by 6 mm. Researchers fabricated multiple dies on a 4-inch sapphire wafer. Sapphire was used as an insulating base that helped electrically isolate the devices. The important achievement was not density. A 6 mm modern silicon chip could hold millions or even billions of transistors, depending on the manufacturing process. WUGI's devices were physically large. Their transistor channels were approximately 3 micrometers long. That is thousands of times larger than the smallest features inside advanced commercial processors. But the researchers were working with university-level fabrication equipment rather than one of the world's most advanced semiconductor factories. They prioritized reliability over density. Before shrinking the system, they needed to prove that the material could support a complete processing architecture. Building a library of logic processor designers do not normally draw every transistor individually. They use collections of verified building blocks called standard cells. A standard cell library may include inverters, AND gates, OR gates, multiplexers, registers, and more complex combinations. Design software connects these cells to create larger circuits. The Fudan team developed a complete library containing 25 types of logic units made from its two-dimensional transistor technology. This was essential. A single transistor is only a switch. Useful computation begins when switches are combined into logic. An inverter changes a 1 into a 0 or a 0 into a 1. An AND gate produces an output only when multiple conditions are true. Registers store temporary values. Adders combine binary numbers. Once these blocks behave consistently, engineers can reuse them throughout the processor. This is where WUGI moved beyond many earlier demonstrations. The project was not only material science. It combined material growth, transistor fabrication, circuit design, standard cell development, and processor architecture. The team co-optimized the manufacturing process and the chip design. Instead of assuming that tools created for mature silicon would transfer perfectly to MIOS-2, researchers adjusted both sides together. The circuits were designed around what the new devices could manufacture reliably. The manufacturing process was improved according to what the processor needed. Why machine learning was used? Wafer-scale two-dimensional materials contain many possible sources of variation. The film may not grow identically across every location. Contacts between metal and the semiconductor can vary. Residue defects and microscopic contamination can affect device behavior. Threshold voltage may shift from one transistor to another. When thousands of devices are connected, these small variations can accumulate. The researchers used machine learning methods to help optimize fabrication steps and improve consistency. This does not mean artificial intelligence designed the complete processor by itself. Machine learning helped researchers analyze manufacturing data, identify relationships between process conditions and device performance, and refine the production flow. The team reported a manufacturing yield of approximately 99.77%. That level of consistency was critical. A processor containing almost 6,000 transistors cannot function if large numbers of devices fail randomly. High yield allowed the team to move from individual test structures to a complete programmable circuit. Why they chose RISC-V? The processor uses the RISC-V instruction set architecture. An instruction set defines the commands a processor understands. Instructions may tell it to add numbers, move data, compare values, or jump to another part of a program. RISC-V is open and modular. Companies and researchers can design processors around it without paying for a proprietary instruction set license. That makes it especially useful for experimental hardware. The researchers did not need to create an entirely new software language simply because they were using a new semiconductor. They could implement a recognized 32-bit architecture and test whether the MIOS-2 processor executed standard instructions correctly. UGI demonstrated arithmetic, including addition and subtraction, as well as movement of data through its registers and control logic. That may sound basic, but basic arithmetic is built from multiple coordinated steps. Inputs must enter the processor. Control logic must decode the instruction. Registers must hold values. The arithmetic unit must produce the correct result. The output must then be stored or transmitted. Completing that sequence proves that the devices are operating as an organized computer. The performance reality. WUGI runs at approximately 1 kHz. That means around 1,000 clock cycles per second. a modern processor may operate at several gigahertz, or several billion cycles per second. The comparison is not close. WuJi also contains fewer than 6,000 transistors, while advanced commercial chips contain tens of billions. During arithmetic operation, the prototype consumed approximately 0.43 milliwatts. That sounds impressive, but it would be misleading to compare the number directly with a high-performance laptop processor. UGI is performing far less computation. Its low total power partly reflects its limited size and very low speed. The researchers are not claiming that this prototype can replace an Intel, AMD, Apple, or Qualcomm processor. The accurate comparison is with previous two-dimensional circuits. From that perspective, UGI represents a major jump from small collections of laboratory devices towards system-level integration. The Wright brothers' first aircraft was not useful as a modern passenger jet. Its importance was proving controlled powered flight. UGI plays a similar role for atomically thin logic. It proves the material can do more than switch one signal in a laboratory. It can form a programmable processing system. Why atomic thickness could matter later. One possible advantage of two-dimensional materials is better control at extremely small dimensions. Another is vertical integration. Modern chips are increasingly stacking components. Memory dies are stacked to create high-bandwidth memory. Chiplets are combined inside advanced packages. Manufacturers are exploring ways to place logic layers above other circuits. The problem is temperature. Traditional transistor fabrication often involves processes hot enough to damage circuitry already built underneath. Some two-dimensional materials may be deposited or integrated at lower temperatures. That could eventually allow engineers to add new logic or sensing layers above completed silicon circuits. A future chip might use silicon for high-performance processor cores, while atomically thin devices handle sensors, local processing, or additional logic in layers above them. Two-dimensional semiconductors may therefore complement silicon before they replace it. They could also be useful in low-power edge devices. A smart sensor may not need billions of transistors or gigahertz performance. It may need a small amount of computation close to where information is collected. Thin materials could potentially combine sensing and processing in compact devices with unusual shapes or strict power limits. What still has to be solved? The road from WuJi to commercial production remains long. The transistor channels must become much shorter. The researchers' current 3-micrometer devices are enormous by modern standards. Better lithography could increase density and improve speed. Contacts between metal and METS2 must also become more reliable and lower in resistance. Manufacturing must scale from small research wafers to large industrial wafers with consistent material quality. The design will need complementary transistor types comparable to the efficient CMOS logic used in modern silicon chips. Packaging, long-term reliability, temperature stability, and manufacturing cost must all be tested. And every improvement must occur without destroying the properties that make the material attractive. A working prototype is evidence of possibility. It is not evidence that mass production will be easy. Shanghai has announced an engineering demonstration line intended to move related two-dimensional chip technology beyond the university laboratory. But ambitious production targets should remain separate from what has already been scientifically demonstrated. The verified achievement today is the processor itself. My take is that the 3-atom headline is impressive, but the most important number is 5,931. Researchers have produced atomically thin transistors for years. The problem was making thousands of them behave consistently enough to create a processor. WuJi demonstrates that the challenge is no longer limited to proving the material can switch current. The conversation can now move toward design libraries, yield, integration, and manufacturing. That is a more difficult stage, but also a more meaningful one. This processor will not compete with commercial silicon. It was never intended to. Its purpose was to cross the gap between an experimental transistor and a functional computing architecture. The team crossed that gap with a 32-bit RISC-V system, 25 types of logic cells, and nearly 6,000 MOS2 transistors. The processor is slow, it is physically large, and it remains a laboratory prototype. But every semiconductor platform begins with devices that look uncompetitive next to the mature technology they hope to challenge. Silicon has received decades of investment, factory development, and design optimization. Two-dimensional semiconductors are only beginning to build that ecosystem. So what do you think? Will atomically thin materials eventually become a serious successor to silicon, or will they remain specialized layers used only in sensors and low-power edge devices? Let me know your view in the comments. And subscribe to Eastern Engine for more grounded coverage of the chips, materials, and manufacturing breakthroughs shaping the future of computing. because China has not built a 3-atom thick replacement for today's fastest processors. But it has proved that transistors only 3 atomic planes thick can work together as a real programmable CPU. And that is where a laboratory material begins becoming a computing technology.